So how are you setting up? So you're living in PA, but exactly how are you doing it? Like when you say you're operating in another market, how are you operating in another market? So you met with her, you identified, so what we call the sweet spots, right? Which are areas probably that people are moving into. Real estate investors want to invest in areas that people are moving into and not out of. Yeah, yes, you can make some money in areas that people are moving out of, but typically in any metropolitan market, any metropolitan area across the country, if you can identify the areas that people are moving into, so the population is increasing either a little bit or a lot, that's going to be where you want to live. So she gave you those areas. Then what's the next step? Exactly how are you doing it? How are you setting it up? How are you finding the leads? How are you marketing? How are they calling you? Are you calling them? So go into that a little bit deeper for a second.
And so whenever I noticed when I was more of a rehabber, it seemed like I was kind of like passive with my marketing. I mean, knock on wood, I had a lot of opportunity with people referring properties to me, and I'd put some signs up and people would call, but it was like fish in a barrel in my area. I didn't have to work for it. And then when the transition, everything happened with COVID, when you asked about, getting into this or getting into that, I noticed rehabbing really wasn't my niche whenever it was COVID time. So I kind of adjusted my sales. I focused more on my Airbnb, my rentals and things like that. But when it came to that, I had to figure out what my plans were, what my goals were. And so working with her, I have to figure out who's doing what, how am I going to do these different components of it. And so whenever it came to wholesaling, I had to figure out the different components, which, I figured it out. I went through a couple transactions, the whole process. And then I said, all right, I can duplicate this.
So how'd you find those leads though?
Those leads?
Yeah. How are you finding leads up in Rhode Island?
I did more things. Like I did some direct mail. I did some, social media marketing, all those kind of things. However, I didn't really ever have to do a lot of cold calling. And that was kind of a part, I didn't realize how I was kind of scared to do that. Right. And I don't know if it was, I didn't do it because
most people are.
I don't know if I didn't do it because I was scared or just, I didn't have to do it. And so now what I do whenever it comes to wholesaling is I kind of run things simultaneous. So I'll do direct mail and then I'll do skip tracing and then I'll call them. Because whenever you do direct mail, it's like balls in your court. Like, call me back, please. Like, sitting here waiting for you. Right. But first off, I don't want to sit for a whole week until they get their letter or their postcard. But also, I just don't want it to be in somebody else's plate. I want to be the action taker. So what I'll do is I'll do direct mail and then I team it up with calling them. And I don't know how many people that I'd call, they'd say, oh, I just got your postcard. Or, and it gives you something to kind of like anchor back to. Like, I sent you this. Did you get this? So it kind of gives you something.
That right there is an excellent idea that I don't think enough investors do. So when you build a list, and we talked a few weeks ago, so you're using AI, the sellability scores inside of Realeflow, and you're building a list in a market, whether it's your local market or like we were talking up in Rhode Island, and you send direct mail right through the system, which automates that process, and then just having the courage or ability to pick up the phone and call. And how does that conversation go? Because you're probably more aggressive than the average real estate investor. Most investors are more passive, meaning they want to send direct mail and just wait for the phone to ring, just wait for sellers to call them. And if you send enough direct mail, that absolutely is a business model that can work in almost every part of the country. So we used to do that. If we go back almost 20 years ago, we would send out thousands and thousands of postcards a month, and we would generate a ton of leads, like dozens and dozens of leads, which would allow us to do, 5 to 10 deals every month. And that was our system. But your system, like you're saying, you're sending to a little bit of a smaller number of leads, highly scored, right? High sellability scores, but you're picking up the phone and calling. So how are these conversations going exactly? Are you surprising them? So are most people rude? Are some people jumping at the chance to chat with you? Like, just talk about that for a minute.
Well, I think it's going to come down to the list that you target. So I'm going to target a couple of different lists. I almost like to call them like my recipes. Okay. It's like I have this recipe, that one, and that one. I have a couple niches that I really hit hard on. If you were to ask me maybe 2 years ago or 5 years ago, who do I target? It would be something different. And I noticed that. And that's where you have to test and track things. And so people that I would market to in the past, they weren't answering as often. They weren't responding to my direct mail. It wasn't anything with the direct mail. It's just that there was hotter lists that were out there.
Yeah.
And so now I'll do a list where I just focus solely on AI, on the artificial intelligence, the sellability score. Because if I can leverage 40 years worth of proven data to give me the predictability that somebody's going to sell their property, why would I not use that? Like, why would I not use a sifter if I can use a sifter? And so I'm going to focus on that. And if I can combine it with other lists, like my favorite list, the hottest list that I've been targeting lately, and the hottest list that I've seen anywhere in the country, I focus on delinquent tax activity. I combine it, if I can, with vacancy, because it's going to come down to how big of a list do you want? Do you want 100 people or do you want 800? So obviously, the more you can stack it, the smaller your list is going to be. But if I can add vacancy, great. But what I usually do is I focus on delinquent tax activity. Then I focus on out-of-state absentee owners. I want them to be out of state. And if I can then sprinkle in, if I can put vacancy on top of that, that's the hottest list that I've ever had. I'll focus solely on individuals. Sometimes if I want a bigger list, I may put in businesses or trusts, but I'm going to always put in individuals. And then the type of property, I want single family. So from that, if you can imagine the person, imagine the seller, get out a crystal ball. They're the type of person that, they're sitting there, they're behind on their taxes. Especially if we were to focus on Rhode Island or here in Ohio, it's cold in the wintertime. Pipes are breaking, utilities are all-time high. So if you can have somebody that they have a property that's sitting there vacant, they don't live in it, nobody does. And in fact, they don't even live in the same state and they're behind on taxes. Like, that's not a type of person where I have to call them and beg them to sell. They're like, please, thank God that you called. I mean, that's the type of person that you want to focus on. Or if you focus solely on pre-foreclosures or foreclosure properties, or if you focus on even like free and clear properties, like, they're not going to be the most motivated, but I want people that are really, really motivated. And when I call them, I just say, hi, this is Jenna. You may not know me. You may not know me, but I buy houses in the area. And I see that you have a property on 123 Main Street. And I know this is probably the crazy phone call, the craziest call you've got today, but do you have any interest in selling? And if they say no, I keep them on the phone. Is it no for now or no forever? And then they'll chuckle.
Right.
And then I'll have people that will say that, no, I don't want to sell it. But then after I talk to them for 2 minutes, they're telling me about a house 3 doors down, the white house on the corner that they want to sell. And then, they'll start talking to you. And I work with different investors across the country, and I'll show them how to do this kind of stuff. I'll share the information that I've learned because somebody took me by the hand. Like, we've worked together for a while and you've taught me so many different things. And if I don't pay that forward and show that to somebody else and teach them how to build the rapport and build that credibility, then it's such a disservice.